Good day, lovelies. It's your favorite goat back again. Thanks for bearing with me for the last couple of weeks. I know I kinda dropped off a bit there, but I'm still here and I'm figuring out how best to balance a maintainable upload schedule with all the horrors that come with the life of a responsible adult. But I've got some cool things cooking for the channel in the pipeline soon, and once a couple of major events in my personal life have come to pass, I look forward to inviting you all properly into Fable Academy. In the meantime, here's another compilation of my short story videos for you all to enjoy. Stay magical! +3 equipment at level 2. A few years ago, I had a player at my table who was something like a year younger than everyone else at the table, and it definitely showed. The campaign was centered around helping their home country during the war, and so they decided to write their character to be the leader of a failed revolution, doing this to decrease their sentence. Which is fine, but they had no intention of letting the character develop for some reason. But here is the problematic part gameplay-wise. They were playing an artificer, and I explained their abilities to them and they knew what they were and when he would get them. And then mid-session 1, they pull out subclass abilities that they didn't have yet. I didn't catch on at first, and it made the other players upset because they were bullshitting more power for themselves. After the first session, there was a 2-day downtime in-game, and they decided they wanted to go to their old base where the revolution was led from, and they fought, and hired, it was a long time ago, some bandits and looked for a secret stash where they said some armor was in their backstory. And they were so tilted when I didn't give them the +3 armor they put in their backstory without telling me in the first session. They were also a massive murder hobo. The party found a village with a plague going on while following some leads on a bandit camp, and they, now having switched their subclass without asking, broke into a random home and tried setting an old lady on fire. And they might have TPK'd if it went through, but their sorcerer stopped them, thank God. At this point, they showed up for sessions less often, likely because they weren't playing like Skyrim how they wanted, and when they came back, a few things had changed. The party stole a highly armed airship from the bandits and found out who was funding them. They had a fight with the bandit leader, and at that point they were over the sea, so they got back to land, found a destroyed town and looted it while the airship was being fueled. And the problem player decided to say, fuck it, stole the airship while everyone was off of it, and fuck off to the other side of the world. So yeah, that is the only problem player I have ever had. I straight up think they thought we were playing Skyrim. I think that story gave me whiplash like 3 times. I don't know what this guy's deal is, but they definitely seem like a problematic player for a game like this. I almost want to be impressed by how much effort he was putting into literally digging up power so early in the game, but I can understand why the DM and the other players were so pissed off by this. And this might just be me being an old goat, but I don't remember being able to murder sick old ladies and steal airships without consequences in Skyrim. Either way, even if the real players lost their airship, a character like that is going to crash and burn anyway, so you're probably better off stranded. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Guest for a session throws a fit when he doesn't kill the party. A while ago, I was playing in a short campaign, 7 sessions total, and we had a guest player for 1 session. He played as a weak old man who didn't want to help the party, but gave us a quest. It was obvious from the start that he was in disguise and was going to turn on the party at some point. The guest player tried to be at the center of attention for the rest of the session. He had an extremely long backstory that he aggressively forced into the conversation, to the point that he was reading it off a screen to us. It was more or less a basic Batman story with a dead family, really not worth the 20 minutes of exposition. When we took a bathroom break in the middle of the session, the guest player cornered the only girl in our group while her boyfriend was in the bathroom. He pressured her into communicating over Facebook Messenger, assumably to hide it from his own girlfriend after the session. It was really weird and cringy. At the end of the session, he revealed himself to be an evil wizard and attacked the party. The paladin in our party was standing right next to him and hit him with a crit smite on the first round of combat, killing the guest PC. The guest player immediately looked at the DM and said, "Yeah, that would kill me. You need to do something about this." The group awkwardly laughed for a moment before we realized the guest was serious and upset. The DM nervously said, okay, we can just double your HP." I could see the paladin deflate after his epic round was more or less undone. About a round later, another player knocked out the evil guest PC. Guest PC still seemed upset by it and started rolling hidden death saves. The party then cleaned up the minions over the next round. When it came back to the guest's turn, he said, "I rolled my 3 saves, so from the ground I cast Dimension Door to a place where you can't get to me." And that was the end. No satisfying conclusion. The DM got pressured and bullied by his guest friend and never corrected him. How did he roll 3 death saves in 1 round? What was the point of him having to escape if the character is never coming back? Why was he so upset the party won when he was playing a villain? This was my first experience with a that guy player. Technically he knew all the rules and roleplayed well, but wanted to win more than anything and cheated or pressured the DM to get his way. He wanted to be the main character in a group he was a guest in. He was also a creep to the only girl in the group. I'm really glad he was only there for a session. TLDR, guest player wants to be the center of attention, gets upset when things don't go his way, is a creep to a girl, pressures DM, and cheats to escape. Yikes. Yeah, OP pretty much covered it all. This guy sounds like a bad player and frankly a bad friend to the DM, and a creep on top of that. Just because you're a guest doesn't mean you're the guest of honor. It's everyone else's game, you're just dying in it. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. D&D player freaks out at DM for running an anime-themed game. This happened before we started the game in earnest. I'd been lurking in this D&D Discord server for a couple months. In between games, people would share memes, art, talk about the game, etc. One of the forever DMs in the server decided to boot up a new game, so he began recruiting players and then got to make a channel. About 2 weeks later, we had our session 0. The premise was a chaotic world with multiple continents with different themes like lava, ice, shadow, desert, fae, tropical beach, rainforest, etc. We started out in a rainforest city ruled by a shogunate under attack from a vampire emperor who sort of looked like Sephiroth from Final Fantasy. DM also explained all the homebrewed races he had for us, mostly from anime or mythology, especially Japanese mythology. He also homebrewed 3 classes along with the traditional ones. There was a Demon Hunter class, a Dark Summoner class, and a Vampiric Legion class. DM then showed us some concept art he drew up for the world, and it had an unmistakable anime theme. It was sorta giving One Piece with some Final Fantasy vibes thrown in too. DM explained this to us as we began creating our characters based on the forms the DM gave to us to help us make sense of some of the homebrew. I remember making this Kitsune barbarian who was adopted into a Dragonborn clan from the Lava continent. As I was building my character, one of the players, I'll call him Jack, who had not said a word all session, piped up and said, "Wow, a lot of weird anime stuff in this campaign." DM just said, "Yep, that's what I was going for," and then kept on as he began to explain the gods, spirits, religions, and philosophies of the world and their buffs so we could pick one. DM said, "No worries, it's still more or less 5th edition rules," and Jack said, "Yeah, right, 5th edition rules with kitsunes, demon hunters, and Japanese clans and shit. What next, are we gonna have a lolicon race?" Another player just kinda chuckled and said, "What the fuck?" And the DM said, "Okay, so you clearly have no idea what anime is. If you don't like the theme, you can play another campaign." And he said, "Why are you getting so defensive?" Ha! Typical Discord mod who probably has terabytes of little anime girls you swear are 10,000 years old. That's probably why you included the vampires too. A fairly high chance you're an ironic fascist too. And then DM banned him from the channel. DM was quiet for a sec, so another player said, "Ignore that jackass. I like your campaign idea." I then agreed and said, "Yeah, never thought I'd be able to say I played as a Kitsune barbarian with a Dragonborn stepdad." DM chuckled and then made a joke about how crazy the Dragonborn are in this campaign. He then continued on and we started our Session 0 exploration. The campaign is still ongoing and we are having a blast. Excuse me, that game sounds awesome. What's this clown talking about? Stop yucking other people's yum and just play somewhere else. Good on OP for saving DM's vibe and not letting that guy ruin a great game. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. The DM who thought he was being smart but actually just annoyed everyone. So, for context, I'm still very good friends with this DM. He wasn't doing this to be mean or anything, he just thought it would be a lot more cinematic a start to the campaign. So I was actually the forever DM for this group, but one of our players decided he wanted to try DMing a campaign. We had just finished a very fun one, so everyone was hyped to get started again. We all created our characters. I was a charismatic rogue, we had an intellectual barbarian, and a fighter and a wizard that were lifelong rivals. We all set up backstories and had fun doing it. I was a human rogue, running from my responsibilities as a noble who sought adventure. The barbarian Dragonborn was on a quest to locate a series of mystical runes that would grant him the secrets of the universe. The human fighter and wizard just wanted to compete and were the reason our characters became a party. Cue session 1. We arrive at a tavern having heard tales of one of the barbarian's runes being used to raise the dead from the eastern mountains. We visit shops and meet a few NPCs, and then just as we're preparing to leave, the sky darkens as swarms of birds flee the eastern mountains. A dragon with scales as red as fire soars over the valley and swoops down, beginning to burn villagers and their homes. The City Watch try to hold them off, but beg the aid of the adventurers. The adventurers hold their ground and try to scare it off, but only one of us had much range. Our fighter had a bow and I had a small crossbow, but we couldn't really do much at level 1. Cue cinematic torching of the village and scripted TPK. Burned letters are scattered across the land, telling of a necromancer with an undead red dragon under his control. The rest of the session is us making new characters. We still play, but I can't help but feel annoyed at the amount of excitement I felt about the characters and their quests, how fun it would be to play. And then we all died, and now I'm a human ranger who was sent alongside a paladin by the king in order to correct this and return the dead to the underworld. Okay, wow, plot twist. As disappointing as this is for OP in the party, which, valid, I can definitely see where the DM was coming from. It's a false start with an unwinnable encounter, it's not unusual, it happens in a lot of games, and hell, it's the first scene in the Vox Machina TV show. But at the very least, this DM could have gone in with pre-made characters and killed them off. Like, they could just say, "It's my first time DMing, so can we use these easy peasy characters, please?" And then whoosh! And here's some blank character sheets, let's have some fun. I feel like that would have been a fun version of this twist. Set the bar low, then break out the fireworks! So yeah, ambitious first-time DM with a good concept but bad execution. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. God-devouring sorcerer orders the rest of the party around like minions. A friend and I were invited to an ongoing campaign by a mutual friend of ours, and we were all super excited to play together. We created a pair of bard and rogue siblings who had survived on the streets together after escaping the Feywild when we were teenagers. The other members of the party were a ranger, they used to play a cleric, but they were using this temporary character when we joined, and a sorcerer who had devoured the soul of the cleric's god before we had joined the campaign. As a result of this, the sorcerer had a charisma stat of 24. We were all playing level 8 characters, and the cleric had left the party as they were understandably quite pissed off. How this whole scenario went down or why the DM had allowed this to happen is beyond me. The session started off with a lot of stronghold administration, which quite frankly is not my idea of a good time. The sorcerer used this opportunity to order the rest of us around. Go get this, we need that, as per my last raven. It all just kind of felt like a weird power trip for him. The DM just let this all happen because, I mean, the sorcerer did have 24 charisma. Eventually we got down to the business of adventuring. We had 2 questlines available to us, rescue a captured NPC or explore a dungeon in search of information about a long-running questline. We decided that saving the NPC was the more pertinent quest, and then out of nowhere the sorcerer proclaimed that actually we were going to explore the dungeon. No discussion, this is what we were doing, and we had no choice in the matter. Again, the DM didn't step in at any point, and honestly, neither my friend nor I were really that bothered. We were both on the same page that this was going to be our first and last session with this party. After a long, drawn-out combat, the sorcerer took the opportunity to invite us into the party because we both seemed very useful. How kind of him. My friend and I gave him a curt, "We'll get back to you," and promptly left. Honestly, the sorcerer's behavior was one thing, but the fact that the DM just went along with his behavior was just baffling. Wow. Okay, I know a lot of stuff happens in long campaigns, but how do you go from a bunch of allies on an adventure to I ate your god and now everyone has to do what I say cause I'm so charismatic? Kinda sounds like this sorcerer is compensating for something, like, you know, maybe his magic staff doesn't measure up. For real though, a problem player is one thing, but this DM is a total enabler and needs to stand up to him. The party votes to save the NPC, you save the NPC. High stats doesn't negate basic etiquette, and at the end of the day your stats could be in the hundreds and the buck stops with this DM, and someone needs to tell him that. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I almost TPK'd my level 2 party with a wild magic surge. So in my current campaign, I'm playing a wild magic sorcerer. We were trying to break into a mayor's office. The streets were clear, but there was a little girl looking at us from the window of her room. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just cast sleep. DM has me roll for wild magic. Nat 1. I roll on the wild magic table and end up casting reverse gravity centered on myself. The party was fairly clustered, so everyone got affected. We were out in the open, no ceiling or anything. We made dexterity saves to hold on to something. Me, thank fuck for being a satyr and advantage on magic effects, and our cleric saved. Our blood hunter, barbarian, and fighter druid all failed. DM let them do another save so that they could hold on to the side of the building. They all failed. Again. DM let them do another dex save to see if maybe they could hold on to the roof. This was our second session and he was trying real hard not to kill the player characters. Blood Hunter and Barbarian succeeded. Fighter Druid, Nat 1. He let the Blood Hunter and Barbarian fall from 50 feet, the Fighter Druid fell from 100 feet. I had 1 healing potion and the Cleric had 1 spell slot left. Blood Hunter was at 2 hit points. The others were unconscious. Fighter Druid was a single hit point away from being insta-killed. Oh, and also, the party didn't know in character that I was a wild magic sorcerer, so the Barbarian thought it was him triggering a trap on the door. My sorcerer didn't tell the rest of the party it was her fault until the next day, and only said something because the Blood Hunter succeeded in insight against my deception that I was innocent. Anyway, we all survived and are now level 5, but like, fuck, man. Okay, this is one of those stories that I really love about D&D, and basically all RPGs where this kind of chaos just happens all the time. Obviously, how critical successes and critical fails actually pan out are up to the DM, but I can just imagine the looks of horror descending on everyone's faces as they realize the slow, quiet part between getting from A to B has suddenly become the most wild and memorable part of the session. But hey, them's the breaks when you play with wild magic. The risks are greater, but the fun never ends. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. DM wanted a female for balance. Gets upset when the females form a group of their own. This went down in my local area's D&D group, where you can post if you're a DM looking for a player, or if you're a player looking for a table. A DM posted saying that a spot had opened up at his table, but he wanted a female for balance because the table was all males. But he also added that this was a dark and edgy homebrew, which on its own wasn't a huge deal, but paired up with the whole looking for a female thing didn't sit well with me, but initially I just scrolled past it. Several women pointed out that having 1 woman at a table of 6 was not balance, and the DM responded that he was trying to create a more diverse table, and seemed completely oblivious to any suggestion that having over 80% of the table being men wasn't adding much diversity, and refused to answer as to why he was so adamant on having a woman at the table. Other commenters, men, who were looking for a table were upset and called sexism because they were being excluded due to their gender, as tables in this area are largely hard to come by unless you offered to host at your house. My spidey senses started to go off as to why he was adamant on having a woman at the table after it was pointed out that it wasn't going to actually bring much diversity to the table, and I think the same happened for several other prospective players. A woman commented that even though she was a woman, she was now leery of joining this particular table, and a few other women posted that they were in the same boat, also not wanting to join. So I suggested we form our own group and someone volunteered to DM. The DM then proceeded to go on a rant in the comments about how he was trying to be a good person by including more women in his game, and instead we were segregating ourselves. He then deleted the entire post and then reposted saying there was one spot at his table free, nothing about gender, etc. No takers just yet, but I'm sure someone, especially the men that were initially excluded, will sign up. The group that I formed had our session 0 last night, and it went really well. Oh boy, here we go. Well, as much of an expert as I am on sexism and the female experience, that's British sarcasm, I'm absolutely not an expert. I feel like everyone is a little unfair in this situation. The DM here might have genuinely had his heart in the right place, even if the women in the story have every right to be skeptical. But even with the best of intentions, the criticism about having a token girl at an all-male table is still valid. And I've seen enough stories about one girl playing at a table full of guys to know just how badly that can go. But the men crying sexism in the comments come so close to understanding the problem, but still willfully fall short. Either way, let's just leave it at I hope this DM finds a great player for his table no matter what gender they are, and I hope the women have a great time at their own game, because these games are for everyone, no matter who you are or who you play with. Let's go, ladies! But that's just my thoughts on it, and in case this video destroys me, it's been nice having a channel while it lasted, so please be gentle in the comments. DM forgets we are adults with jobs. Pathfinder 1st Edition one-shot. Characters don't matter for reasons I will explain shortly. One of our friends and former DMs moved out of state for a job but came back for a weekend. Another player agreed to let him stay over at his place for the time being, and former DM was going to run a one-shot, so we were very excited. It quickly became evident players and DM had very different ideas of what constituted a one-shot. We started off in a tavern where we were supposed to meet someone who would give us more information on the quest. However, we didn't find anyone meeting the description of our client, so we waited. Then started to investigate the area, making various diplomacy checks and attempts at investigation. At one point, my sorceress with a 32 charisma, or something just as ridiculous, for a one-shot we were allowed very high-level characters, grew bored and seduced a guy at the bar. This whole RP experience probably took less than 5 minutes, but ended with DM huffing, "Now that we've gotten that out of the way." At one point we thought we had identified our client, but DM insisted it was not him. 3 hours later, not in-game, but in reality, the DM revealed that yes, that was our quest giver, and he had just spent all this time assessing us to make sure we were worthy of being handed a quest. Or some other bullshit reasoning, so we were given a place to go and do stuff. The game started at 6 PM, so at 9 we are finally getting a quest. We get into a fight. Our wizard lets off a bunch of high-level spells, and the DM goes, "Are you sure you don't want to save that for later? We're just getting started." Wizard player replies, "It's late, and people need to get home soon." We ended having won the fight but not having any sort of meaningful story resolution. This is such a shame, because it sounded like a great setup to a true glory story of old friends reuniting for something great, just like old times. But even the closest of tables can fall victim to breakdowns in communication. It sounds like DM thought this would be an event everyone would clear their schedules for and truly lock in, which is all well and good if it's communicated better than this seems to have been. Real people have real lives as much as we try to escape them with these games, and it sounds like everyone was really excited and it ended up being a total missed high five, which is really no one's fault but everyone's disappointment. But with a group like this, it seems like no one's really gotten hurt and nothing's truly lost. Just lessons to learn for the next time DM's in town. My advice, if you're gonna run an all-day session, maybe start it earlier than 9 PM on a work night. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. DM tries to gay shame a friend and me, then it gets worse. So a year ago, my friend John, my girlfriend Jane, and I started playing in a new group with 2 friends of ours, and Kyle, the GM, a friend of theirs. I made a male human fighter of low birth who aimed to become some kind of champion, while John played an elven female wizard of noble birth who wanted to find out who she was outside of her family. Over the first 5 sessions or so, John and I noticed that we had created the perfect opportunity for a cliché romance with the lowborn guy wanting to prove himself to this out-of-reach highborn girl, and she wanting him to acknowledge her for her personality, not her heritage. So we started RPing this romance, exchanging flirty banter, awkward compliments and the like, nothing sexual or dirty as no one at our table is into that kind of stuff. We really had fun and the other players liked it too, one of their characters even trying to matchmake us. But soon the GM Kyle started to try to convince everyone at the table that we were gay, even though we are both straight, for romancing each other, even though we obviously only did so in character. For a while we were like, okay, whatever when this came up, because we were having fun nonetheless and didn't want to open Pandora's box. But after a while, sessions 16 or 17 I think, our characters actually became a couple, and at that point, Kyle really just lost it. First he tried to punish us in character, even though we didn't get that at that point and just thought he wanted to challenge us as a group. He then very awkwardly tried to convince my girlfriend that I, being obviously gay, wasn't right for her, and that she should get together with him and his superior straight maleness. After that very awkward session, we decided we would sleep on it and then discuss it with the group the next day. But when we woke up, he had messaged John and me that he had to kick us from the table because he just couldn't be around gays, and had then blocked us everywhere. He had also messaged my girlfriend inviting her to stay at the table and dump me. At that point, even the two friends of ours who had tried to stay as passive as possible about the conflict decided that they could no longer play with him. We decided to start a new campaign with John as the GM and have been playing happily ever since. We wrote Kyle a letter, yeah, an actual letter, as he had blocked us everywhere, trying to explain our point of view and the problem with his homophobia, but he unsurprisingly never answered. Gee Kyle, whatever happened to exploration and curiosity? Seriously though, this is so laughably pathetic and hilariously stupid. I mean, what more can you say? A game where there's half-elf wizards and he draws the line at two straight guys playing a straight romance? I mean, you gotta laugh. The GM is a textbook incel homophobe, and the happy ending is OP and Jane are still together, they're all playing a great game, and he is far away. The only real comment I have is that I wish your friends hadn't been passive as long as they had. If you see that kind of thing coming, you gotta make like a Gillette ad and be better, bros. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. You can't miss if you don't roll. I was running a D&D game for my partner's younger brother, half our age, still a teenager, and his friends. Only one of the kids had played before, one of those snarky, smart, angsty kids who would have lived and died on Tumblr if she'd grown up a decade earlier. Ooh, that's a deep cut. She played exactly one character archetype, the too smart for you blaster caster, and she played it well. Maybe too well? Soon after she joined, the campaign went online. I hadn't paid too much attention to her rolls, except that she seemed luckier than most, but that pattern quickly spiraled. She almost never missed an attack roll, or failed a save. Her charisma scores were never great, but she dominated every social interaction. I usually have a lot of trust in my players, so I was letting them all roll dice at home and just report the end result. I was obviously suspicious, and on one occasion wrote down the results of 40 plus different checks, attacks, and saves. In combat, her average roll on the die was a 17. Out of combat, it was a 15. She rolled below a 10 once, and it was a 9. This was a pretty normal night for her. After that, I made everyone use Discord's dice roller, and she complained without fail every time she failed a roll. After COVID, I ran a few in-person sessions of Monster of the Week. Everyone rolled on the table except for Blastercaster, now playing a Spooky, who rolled inside her tiny dice case and reported the results to us. You guessed it, almost every roll was a 10 plus, a full success. She threatened to walk home if I made her roll on the table. I was in shock. She had to know I knew, that I had known for a while, but her projected fantasy of a brilliant, sassy, magical genius who was never wrong forced her to look me in the eye and tell me she just rolled her 8th 12 of the night on 2d6. That was the end of her at my table, but my partner's brother kept running games with her. It's been a couple of years now, and while she's since been confronted on her cheating and has toned down the fake rolls, she recently got caught adding literally 10 extra feats to her most recent Blastercaster wizard. Note, for those wondering why I didn't confront her myself, I talked to my partner's brother about it and he said he didn't want to lose her as a friend, and he was worried she'd take it out on him if I said anything. Ugh, this is so frustrating because it sounds like this player actually would have enjoyed the game if she wasn't cheating so much and being a little butt munch to the other players and the DM. But blatant cheating aside, I want to tell OP's partner's brother to get better friends, because if he's so worried he'll lose someone over stuff like this, it sounds like he's the one we need to be worried about. Look, I was the kid who let my friends push me around in school, goad me into doing stuff I didn't want to do, and it's not a good experience. So honestly, don't sweat this kid, but it sounds like your partner's brother needs a friend like you, OP, so seriously, stick close to him. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.